This episode of the KrakCast is brought to you by our friends at BigDoor24.pl. It's a new service that not only matches expats with local property experts who speak their language, but it gives you cash-back discounts on successful credit applications. So go to BigDoor24.pl, that's BigDoor24.pl. Find out all the information you need to get the mortgage you want. Again, BigDoor24.pl. Make sure you use the special promo code KrakCast to get a great cash-back offer. And now, on with the show. We thought it would be a good idea to turn to a topic that we haven't really addressed on the KrakCast before, something that's relevant to all of us because we all have to live somewhere, right? Of course, I'm talking about the real estate market, something everybody's involved with, either as a buyer, a seller, a renter, or so on. So we thought it would be a good idea to bring in an expert on the local market and the Polish market generally. John Naughton is originally from Ireland, but he's been here in the property working in the property market for about 14 years in Poland, and he's now the force behind BigDoor24.pl, which is a site for helping anybody looking to buy, sell, or rent all over Poland. John, welcome to the KrakCast.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you know the property market here in Krakow. Give us the big picture, the bird's eye view of the general situation of the property market as it is at the moment.
Probably the first thing to say about it is that it's stable in comparison to, let's say, the craziness that went on in Ireland that, you know, the world would have heard about, or in Iceland. It generally doesn't go rapidly up and it doesn't go rapidly down. There's no reason for it to go rapidly down.
So there's no crazy spikes up and down. It's kind of a steady trend upward, I guess. Yeah? No,
the economy is pretty well managed. And if we look, for example, last week, there were some numbers out that the salaries had gone up by 6% and unemployment had gone down. I mean, that obviously just leads to more demand and possible price rises. The government, the central bank, has implemented fairly strict controls on how much you can borrow to buy. So that has tended to allow, you know, it tampered down too many price rises.
Yeah, it's a complicated complicated, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, wages and inflation and monetary policy and unemployment, you know, a lot of factors, a lot of variables go into this, but Poland seems to be managing the growth reasonably well. Is that fair to say?
I would think so. I would think so. I mean, you know, you look at any of the numbers, and if you compare it to any of the other economies, it's doing very well. And I would think that most people will be very positive on where the Polish economy is going to go. I mean, there's lots of statistics out there, but one quite startling fact, and this is just anecdotal, but there's approximately 50% of new apartments that are bought with cash.
That's an amazing number. I've seen that before as well. That's incredible to think that many people have that much cash sitting around. Yeah.
I mean, I think probably the numbers in, you know, Germany, I think, are somewhere around 10% or maybe 15%. And we all know how good savers they are. So to me, that means that there is a huge amount of room to grow. Once you introduce credit, the multiplier effect kicks in and more people can buy, the more people that take credit.
Let's talk about the Krakow market because I guess we'll talk about this some other time, but you can make the argument that the big cities in Poland are kind of islands unto themselves when it comes to the real estate market. Let's talk about the Krakow market. Good time to buy? Should we wait? Is the best time already passed? How do you see it right now for somebody looking to invest some money in real estate now?
Well, it depends on why you want to do it. I certainly don't think anything is going to go down anytime soon. I also don't think that you can buy something, rent it out, and just live on the proceeds, unless you've got a number of apartments and you're doing it with cash. So, first of all, I don't think there's any reason to wait. If you have cash and you have access to credit, there are still reasonably good yields, good returns that will cover the cost of your mortgage. So in any market, that's a good time to buy. Particularly when you think that the pressure might be on price rises in the future.
The prices don't look like they're going to go down. I mean, they only go one way up.
Yeah,
it seems to me it's like a ratchet effect. It goes up, 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 up.
Yeah, but we're not. I mean, but the gains that we see, you shouldn't be doing it in a way that you think, oh, I can flip this and sell it next year. Because there's a lot of intrinsic costs in buying that you need to be aware of as well in terms of notary costs, taxes, agency fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So.
What is the average price for the Krakow market? The average price for a square meter for a new place is what, 7.5 maybe, just under 8,000.
Yeah. We're launching a series where we're going to be looking at that in particular detail in terms of per district how much each square meter is and the rental return you'll get, and we're hoping to release that next week. But yeah, it's probably fair enough. But if you look at the most common areas, you could be paying 8.5, 9, 10, 11. And then you've got a fit out cost, which is 2,000-3,000.
Yeah, in Poland, a lot of people don't know this, but in Poland, when you buy a new apartment, they call it stan surowy, which means the raw state. In other words, you get the key to the door, there are windows, and that's it. That is it. There's a cement floor, there are no doors, there's like wires and pipes sticking out of the wall, and you finish it yourself, which in many cases could add up to maybe 20, 25, 30% on top of what you already paid to finish the place.
Yeah. Plus, and I mean, this is something I would argue strongly about. It's the time.
And finding the people to do it.
It's the time. I mean, even if you have an entire team good to go, you're constantly checking, are the wires in properly? Are the plugs working? I mean, I don't know how much that's worth.
That's kind of related to my next question because, and this is a question a lot of people ask, looking for a place to live. They ask this question a lot. Any online forum connected with real estate is going to have the same question over and over again. Give me the shortest answer you can give me on this. Rent or buy in Krakow right now?
Buy.
Despite the pain in the butt with finishing it and everything? Then you get into buy, and then there's another choice to make, new or used?
Used.
Okay. You know what? I did say the shortest answer you can give me. It kind of is my fault. Okay. Let me backtrack on that.
I can tell you why I think.
Why used?
I think, and I'm sure there's lots of people who will disagree with me on this. And this again is just my own experience. But there is a premium in new. Culturally, there's a premium that Poles will pay for a brand new apartment.
Kind of like a brand new car. You're paying a
premium for a brand new car. Exactly. I just, when you're buying a house, it's obviously financial, but it's also emotional. But I can make arguments on both sides as to why the idea of walking into a second-hand apartment where somebody has already done all of the work, you have less people want to buy that. So therefore, you are more likely to get a better price on it. You may not like the colour of the wall, you may not like some of the furniture, but these things are all more easily changed. So I think there's more bargains, to be honest, in the second hand.
I'm laughing because you say you may not like the color of the wall. Isn't it funny? You step in somebody's apartment and you take one look at the kitchen, take one look at the bathroom, and you think, how could somebody choose that pattern? How often do you walk into a place and say, oh, that's perfect, I'll keep it just the way it is? Why does that never happen? That's strange, huh?
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of incentives for, if you're planning to sell your place and you decorate it up and everything, to not do it in any kind of individualistic way, but rather to keep it as magnolia, vanilla bland as possible.
Grey is such a popular color nowadays.
Yeah, right down the middle. Keep it simple. John, you look around town, or you walk around town around Krakow, and you see crane after construction site after crane and construction site. It seems that any plot of land where you can build something is, it's a building site already. And they're all apartments, of course. Is that kind of testimony or proof to the fact that the demand is still sky high if the supply seems to be massive? Or are we headed for some huge market correction? Or is there wild speculation going on here? How do you explain the cranes that I see everywhere?
So, okay, if you approach it from the point of view of demand, and I'm sure my numbers are wrong here because I remember seeing this many years ago, but I think within 100 kilometers there's 10 million people. So you have the demand of all of those parents who know that their kids are going to go to college in Krakow. So why not buy an apartment there now When the kids are ready to go, they can live in the apartment. That's fine. Then you have the local demand, which, as we know, is strong enough with all the outsourcing companies and all the numerous amounts of small businesses that were set up in the last 10 years that are flourishing. So you have the demand coming from there. Then you throw on top of that the millions of tourists that are arriving every day.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Not every day, sorry, but which then leads us into the whole Airbnb market. There may not be demand for people to live in these apartments themselves, but there is enough demand from these aren't even speculators. These are people who are just looking to maybe provide for their pension or their kids or whatever. And then on top of that, if the 50% number is correct in terms of cash buyers, that means that there is still a lot of people who have access to credit, whether they know it or not, but they can borrow 80, 90% and just have an apartment. So there's huge demand out there. Again, I want to preface this by saying I don't expect it to go up by 20% in 2 weeks or anything like that.
Yeah, the days of huge gains are gone, I think. Yeah. No, I think you're right about one thing. You mentioned the people buying for their kids. It's a bit of a cliche now. In fact, just in my own circle of friends, my family, I can think of several examples of people who did exactly that. They know that their kid is good. And again, they're from small towns around Krakow, within 2-3 hours. They know their kid is going to go to university here. So buy an apartment here so they have a place to live. And then just after university, they can rent it out to someone else. And everybody does this. Everybody has the exact same plan. Buy a 35 meter apartment for their kid to live in, or buy a 35 meter apartment to rent out to tourists. And so when I see these cranes and all these construction sites, I kind of assume that maybe 20% of the apartments will be filled by people who actually live there, like that is their home, and the rest are going to be basically transient, either changing every weekend in the form of Airbnb or changing every 3 or 4 years as students. So I think you're spot on with that. You mentioned Airbnb. Let's talk about that, because that's a really interesting subject we've talked about before on the KrakCast. A lot of people make the argument that Barcelona and Prague and just choose a vacation destination are being ruined by Airbnb and other services like it, because they're turning what used to be quiet neighborhood buildings into party hotels. What's your take on Airbnb's influence in Krakow, and where do you see it going in the near future?
First of all, I don't think there are enough Airbnb properties here yet.
Not enough.
Well, not enough to sustain the demand. Now, whether that's right or wrong is a different argument.
Yeah.
But like anything, if you go to a new city that you don't know anything about, you type in centre and you try and get something there. And if there's a big square like we have in Krakow, then you want to be as close to that as possible. What I've noticed in the last certainly 6 to 12 months, and again, we did a piece on our blog about Airbnb and the kind of yields that are available. There are more and more Airbnbs now available outside the Planty, outside the Ring Road, where people are a little bit more comfortable about renting, with the addition of, look, there's a very good tram system, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the demand will stay the same or get more. Now, whether that's a good thing or not is a different question.
It is, yeah. It is. Do you see kind of public backlash against Airbnb, or kind of movements by local city councils to take steps to kind of limit the ability of owners to rent out their properties like that? Do you see that having any kind of real effect, or are they just kind of fighting against the wind?
You would know more about this than me. I mean, this is down to local government. I mean, it's happening in cities all over Europe.
It is.
It's manifested itself primarily in the fact that normal working people can't find properties to rent because the rent has gone up because of Airbnb, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes it's Airbnb's fault, and sometimes they just use that as an example. Your question relates to, will the local government, respond to that? I don't know whether they will. But I would imagine there will certainly be a movement against them.
But just in your own experience working with people and looking to invest in property here in Krakow, how often is that kind of their stated goal, is to buy a place to rent out to tourists? Is that very common, or is it the exception, or what?
Well, from my experience now, and I haven't been involved in actual real estate agencies or anything like that for the last 2 years, but people that I've spoken to, they will say that as something that they would like to do, and then say, oh, it's too much hassle. And probably just rent out to a local. But as it's becoming more and more easy, as services appear for changing the sheets, etc., and you can have that key box or the code or whatever, as people become more and more aware of that, I think that they will switch to it, because the difference is huge. I mean, you can get anywhere, let's say 150 zloty for a small apartment per night in Krakow. Your monthly rent doesn't even come close to that.
Can you imagine a situation where a developer makes a decision about a big investment on the basis of selling almost exclusively to people with that intention? In other words, they don't give a damn about the local market, about people looking for a place to live. They're building a de facto hotel. Is that within the realm of possibilities?
If you look at Salvator Tower, which I think was released maybe 10 years ago or 8 years ago, they were actually pitching the rooms as investments. So the developer was saying, look, just buy this, we'll buy it off you again in 25 years, we'll handle everything. Not all of that tower, but parts of it were. It would surprise me if people didn't do that. That's all about the credit that the developer has, and I don't think they have a problem with credit at the moment.
There's a place, what's it called, Angel City, I think, just up by the mall on Pavia Street.
Yeah.
And you walk by there at night, any night of the week, and most of the lights are off.
Yeah.
Actually, Monday to Thursday, they're off. On the weekend, they're probably on.
Yeah.
And I don't have the numbers to back this up, but I'm sure most of the owners, the actual owners of those properties, they live in Dublin or Manchester or Glasgow or London, any number of places. They don't live here.
Yeah.
And I just think about the people who do live there, and there are a handful, I'm sure. And, what they kind of miss out on in terms of community feeling and whatnot. It's just, they live in a place where most of their neighbors change every Thursday or Friday. It's rather odd.
Well, I do know of one person who owns an apartment there. Again, time factor, couldn't be bothered fitting it out. Had just bought it for investment purposes and rented it to a retailer in Galeria Krakowska to store their stuff.
So it's storage, basically.
It was used as storage and still got.
Well, it is across the street, so yeah, why not?
Why spend the? I mean, let's say it was 60. Why spend the 150,000 zloty on doing it up when you can get 1,500 a month and you don't have to do anything with it?
It is a business after all, right?
But yeah, John, I think you're right about the number of people who own Angel City in particular.
Oh, that one is it's depressing for me. I walk by there at night and I just see. I don't see anyone's home. I see an investment portfolio.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm naive. Maybe I should kind of update the way I think. Maybe this is the way things really are. But I feel bad for the people who live, especially with kids, and there's no community feel. There's no neighborliness. It's just you live in an investment, and that's very weird, I think.
Again, there's so many moving parts to this. I mean, if you look at it emotionally...
which is probably the wrong way to look at it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, anybody buying their first home... I mean, I always joke about buying your first home after you get married. I mean, economically, that makes absolutely no sense because the market doesn't care when you got married.
The market doesn't care
that you just got married.
A great slogan for a real estate property agency, wouldn't it?
So
really.
It's irrational, but at the same time, it's very emotionally important that somebody buys a house. So, there's so many moving parts. I mean, I wouldn't suggest that anybody buys anything if they can't afford it. And they should certainly make sure that if they can't rent it out, they can at least cover the mortgage for a few months if they have to. So, it's a big financial investment. So, I'd advise people to be careful about it, but there's certainly opportunities out there.
Bigdoor24.pl is the site. Check it out if you're looking to buy, sell, rent, all things related to property and real estate. You'll find all the information you need there. John, thanks for joining us.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.